Welcome everyone, Questini here with my Mass Effect 3 Legendary Edition squad member rankings on Insanity difficulty level. And for this particular video, I'm only going to consider Kaidan and not Ashley as the Vermeer survivor. I'm also only going to consider squad members that you can use throughout the entire game, not DLC specific like Arya or Nyreen from the Omega DLC, or Anderson in the prologue of the game. Another thing to talk about here before I start talking about the individual squad members is the weapons themselves. Generally speaking, and this carries over from Mass Effect 2 into Mass Effect 3 in large part, generally speaking, squad members tend to do the best with assault rifles and with sniper rifles. So I think in Mass Effect 3, certainly assault rifles win that race by quite a bit. SMGs, shotguns, and pistols tend to do worse. So squad members that can't use assault rifles or sniper rifles are going to fall behind compared to those that can. There are, however, some exceptions. When it comes to pistols, there is one particular pistol that's so far ahead of everything else that it's not even funny. And we're, of course, talking about the M11 suppressor pistol that you can get as part of the Citadel DLC. It may not seem like it has such incredible stats, but it does fire pretty fast and it does do a significant amount of damage. I mean, consider the Executioner pistol versus the suppressor. Like, the Executioner can do a lot of damage, but it doesn't have the fire rate of the M11 suppressor. So the M11 suppressor does have a great deal of power behind it, and squad members will actually utilize it in the best possible fashion because they don't have to be concerned about the ammo. This thing can waste a lot of ammo, though it's still a really good pistol even for Shepard. And then, of course, there is the best weapon in the game by far and away for squad members. For Shepard, things are different, but for squad members, it is the N7 Typhoon. It has a high fire rate, and squad members don't have to worry about ammo. Nor do they actually have to worry about the accuracy of this weapon as much as Shepard does. Now, this weapon was designed really for a specific class type in multiplayer, and then it got added in single player. You can do decent damage with this as Shepard, but squad members will just handle this much, much better. To the point that they can annihilate everything in their path with relative ease. Some squad members will just play the game for you, basically. Or one particular squad member will play the game for you if you give them this specific weapon. And of course, then there's abilities to consider, the various abilities that squad members do have. But yeah, assault rifles generally do have an advantage, though it's not the be-all and end-all when it comes down to it. So, starting with the rankings, at number 1, it is Garrus Vicarian. If there is a deity to worship in Mass Effect 3, it is Garrus. He is by far and away the best squad member in the game. You will trivialize the entire game with that N7 Typhoon I mentioned. Kind of goes against Garrus's story, if you will, or theme, because he should really be using a sniper rifle. But once I started using assault rifles with Garrus, things became trivial, especially with the N7 Typhoon. Now, I'm sure a lot of people didn't even bother with the N7 Typhoon pack because it was a paid DLC, but with Legendary Edition making a baseline, yeah, things have obviously changed. Now, Garrus does have concussive shot, pretty decent ability, though I wouldn't invest too many points or any points in it early on, and I would only spend the points very late on. Like these free ranks that I've gotten in it, I only spent the points once I had maxed out everything else. Then he has Overload. Overload can help, obviously, with shields, barriers, synthetics, the GEF in particular, though not just the GEF, turrets, for instance, from Cerberus. So you can increase recharge speed, damage, and by rank 4, you will be able to do a decent amount of damage, decent recharge speed. At rank 4, you get the choice between hitting an additional target or increasing the damage. I prefer to increase the damage here when it comes to it. Then you can either incapacitate weaker organic enemies or increase the recharge speed. Go to recharge speed. And then you can either increase the damage by 15% or increase the damage to barriers and shield by an additional 100%. So he's doing double damage with this to barriers and shields. And that is pretty substantial in its own right. Then there is one of the first skills that helps make Garrus overpowered. Armor is a particular issue in Mass Effect 3. The most difficult to take down enemies are the ones with armor. And armor is certainly harder to deal with than shields or barriers in Mass Effect 3. Like Banshees, for instance, they're not dangerous because they have high barriers. They're dangerous because they have a ridiculous level of armor. Anyway, by rank 3, you'll have 14% health damage bonus, 14% armor damage bonus, a minus 50% to enemy damage, enemy armor effectiveness, and a penetration of cover at 0.7 meters, which is not especially useful for Garrus, by the way, because you want him to stay at a long distance and kill everything in sight. At rank 4, you either get the choice between giving it to squad mates. I wouldn't do so, to be quite honest, because getting 6% extra health and armor damage just feels more substantial to me. At rank 5, you get a choice between ammo capacity and headshot damage. Since I want Garrus to use assault rifles, I choose to go with ammo capacity. So 30% ammo capacity means that he fires any assault rifle, especially the Typhoon, he will fire it for longer before needing to reload. And then at rank 6, either choice between decreasing the effectiveness of armor targets by an additional 25%. So he would decrease the effectiveness to minus 75%, or an additional health and armor damage by 10%. I went with the damage, though I think I should really reconsider this choice if I ever play this game fully again, because it just feels like that armor effectiveness might be more useful. But yeah, with the choices I made, plus 30% health and armor damage, minus 50% armor effectiveness, and a penetration at 0.7 meters. Then there's Proximity Mine. What you need to know about Proximity Mine is this. It's not consumable, so it's just bound by recharge speed. At rank 4, I went with the damage, though I honestly should have gone with the impact radius here. Mistake on my part, because at rank 5 is the main use of the Proximity Mine, the damage taken upgrade, as opposed to slowing a target. Increasing the damage taken by all targets by 20% for 8 seconds is pretty substantial. So if I could increase the radius, hit more targets with the mine, would make it more useful. And then at rank 6, increase the recharge speed. So getting recharge speed, impact radius, and that debuff to increase damage taken is pretty strong. It's not the direct damage of the mine that's important, it's this particular debuff combined with Garrus using assault rifles that makes it a dangerous skill. And then there's Turian Rebel. And it's Turian Rebel that elevates Garrus above everyone else. I mean, Turian Rebel with Proximity Mine with armor piercing, of course, but really Turian Rebel more so than anything else. Okay, so by rank 3, you're looking at the 60% weapon damage increase and 30% health and shield bonus. At rank 4, you can increase that to 100% weapon damage. So Garrus is doing double the damage that he does normally. Then at rank 5, he can further increase his assault rifle damage by 50%. So he's going to do 150% extra damage with assault rifles. I would not increase the power damage. I think that would be a waste of a choice. And then at rank 6, you can either increase the power damage of squad mates or increase the sniper rifle damage by 60%. Normally, I wouldn't use sniper rifles all that much on Garrus, unless it's some specific situations, some maps or some situations where you just want him to do damage from range. But most of the time, you want Garrus to be using an assault rifle as opposed to a sniper rifle. But I do think it's better to increase sniper rifle damage by 60% as opposed to the power damage of squad members. So Garrus, with this skill line, he's doing a plus 150% assault rifle damage and 160% sniper rifle damage. And then you combine it with Proximity Mine, so you're looking at 170% plus damage with assault rifles when the proximity mine effect is active. And then you're looking at the health and armor damage bonus of armor-piercing ammo. You're looking at Garrus gaining 200% extra damage compared to baseline. This is the highest weapon damage that any squad member in the entire game can get. Outside of like the Arsenal Arena squad mates or the Omega DLC squad mates, it's so ridiculous that Garrus with the Typhoon will annihilate Harvesters, which, if I'm not mistaken, they have some of the highest HP, if not the highest HP in the entire game. Or rather, the highest armor. So yeah, Garrus is absolutely ridiculous. And his damage output, if he could fire continuously, his damage output probably could be higher than every other squad member combined. It is that insane. Maybe I'm exaggerating, but only by a bit when it comes down to it. And number 2, we have Javik. Like Garrus, Javik can use assault rifles, though he's not really going to benefit the assault rifle damage as much as Garrus, nor near as much as Garrus can, but he does have some pretty sweet biotic abilities that do make him useful. So he has Dark Channel. And Dark Channel puts debuff on a target, increasing the damage that target is, or rather, making sure that target is taking damage over time. At rank 4, increase the damage or the duration. The duration is fairly long regardless, so you may want to increase the damage there. And what's important with Dark Channel is that it can transfer to a second target if the first is killed. Then at rank 5, you can either slow the target or increase the recharge speed. I do prefer the recharge speed over here. And at rank 6, you can either increase the damage by 50% or increase the damage to armor and barriers by 75%. This is the better choice. Pierce is the better choice, simply because it's shields, it's armor and barriers that are going to give you the biggest issues, not the HP bars of enemies. So yeah, go for that. Then you've got Lift Grenade. Now, Lift Grenade can do a ridiculous amount of damage, and you can get biotic explosions with it. With, say, for instance, Slam that Javik can use. And Lift Grenades don't have a cooldown, though they are limited use. But when you do use them, the impact is going to be significant. So significant that if you lob enough grenades, everything in front of you will literally just die in very short order. Though, yeah, the limited use does prevent them from being as powerful as they could be, but they are a significant amount of damage, especially when you consider the biotic explosions. At rank 4, you have a choice between damage or impact radius. I prefer the impact radius in this case because I want more targets to be affected by the Lift Grenade, so I can get those juicy biotic explosions, those combos. At rank 5, you can either get power duration or grenade capacity. I prefer the grenade capacity. And rank 6, you can either get a slam effect as the lift wears off, or to get damage and impact radius. Prefer the impact radius, hits more targets, and of course the damage. So you're looking at 1200 points of damage for every target that gets hit by it in a radius of 8 meters. That is pretty decent. Then you've got Pull and Slam. Pull is pretty useless. I wouldn't invest points in it. Slam, however, is a different discussion, right? Biotic explosions, increasing the force or impact radius at rank 4. Go with force. At rank 5, you can either increase the damage and force of biotic detonation by 50% or increase the force by 50%. Go with the 50% damage of biotic detonation for it. And then rank 6, you can either stun a target or increase the recharge speed. Recharge speed it is. Then we go into Vengeful Ancient. He increases the power damage bonus by rank 3 of 60%. So his abilities are going to do 60% more damage. And on rank 4, you can increase it by a further 40%. So he's doing double damage with his abilities. And rank 5, he can increase his weapon damage or the power damage by an additional 40%. I chose to go with the weapon damage by 20% to help him out with the Typhoon. Though there is an argument to be made of increasing his power damage to 140% being very much worth it. And then at rank 6, you can either increase the squad mate power damage, duration, and force, or increase the squad mate shield recharge speed by 20%. I like the shield recharge speed by 20%. Because it helps Shepard recover quicker. So that's what I chose. So Javik is going to do 20% damage with assault rifles specifically, and he's going to do double the damage with biotic abilities. And what's also important to note is because left grenade is not on a cooldown, you can combine left grenade with slam. Like, Javik can get biotic explosions very, very quickly if you're using a left grenade. He's useful to have in a squad of multiple biotics, like if Shepard is a biotic, if you bring Liara as well. He's great to have in that situation, but he's also good to have just simply on his own. He will certainly handle himself pretty well solo as a biotic when it comes to those biotic explosions. You'll do a lot of damage in those biotic explosions, and remember, he still can use an assault rifle. Even if he doesn't buff it that much, it's still a Typhoon, regardless. And so he's going to do a ridiculous amount of damage with just that alone. Combine that with the on-use abilities he has, Javik is capable of really controlling a fight and doing significant damage in an AoE to all enemies, especially like in tighter corridors. He will do very well. He does best when paired with another biotic, but again, he can handle himself solo as well. And number 3, we have Kaidan. And honestly, I would put Ashley in the same position here as well, because both of them can use assault rifles, though Ashley is going to be better from a pure damage roll. Kaidan is, however, going to be significantly better from a survival perspective. He doesn't have the best HP or shields, but he does have 2 abilities that will significantly improve his survivability. First off, he has Barrier, which will reduce the damage taken by 15% by rank 3, have a decent recharge speed, blast radius, blast damage, though it will slow power usage by 60%. At rank 4, you get the choice between either increasing the damage of it on explosion when it expires or decreasing the damage taken by 5%. I go with the damage taken reduction. You can then increase damage and force by 25% or increase shield regeneration rate by 15% while barrier is active. In this case, like either choice, it's pretty irrelevant as far as I see it. And then at rank 6, you can reduce the power speed penalty by 30% or increase damage protection. I do prefer reducing the power speed penalty because he's got 20% damage reduction by this. You can increase it by 30% if you want him to be an absolutely ridiculous tank, but you could also use abilities more often with him. And using abilities with Kaidan is actually useful because then he has Reeve. Reeve will drain a target's health, disrupt their resistance, and increase damage protection while it is in effect. And it's effective against barriers and armor, so against shields, against armor. Rank 3, you're looking at 13 seconds recharge speed, 126 damage per second, and a duration of 5.4 seconds. At rank 4, you can either increase duration or impact radius. I go with duration. At rank 5, 10% extra damage reduction or recharge speed. Prefer the damage protection, the 10% damage protection by default. It's 15, so you're looking at a quarter damage reduced. And then at rank 6, you either get the choice of increasing its effectiveness against armor and barriers, or increasing the damage, duration, and damage protection by a further 15%. So Reeve gives Kaidan a 40% damage reduction, 8-second duration, 13-second recharge speed, though of course Kaidan is also going to use power slower because of barrier. But suffice it to say, Kaidan has an enormous amount of damage protection. So from Reeve, he gets 40%. From barrier, he's getting 20%, so 60% damage reduction. He's probably the tankiest squad member you can have by default, unless you're talking about Rex in the Arsenal Arena. Then he does have Overload for however much you're going to use it. You can do a good amount of damage with it against shields and against synthetic enemies. Cryoblast, not really too important, can weaken armor, but I do prefer using Overload more. Cryoblast can be useful in certain situations, but I tend not to focus on it. And then Alliance Officers. You're looking at 45% power damage bonus and 15% health and shield bonuses of this. At rank 4, you get 20% weapon damage or increasing health and shields. Prefer the weapon damage at this point. I mean, Caden has so much survivability from Barrier and Reeve that he doesn't need the durability upgrade. Then at rank 5, you can either increase the biotic power damage or the tech power damage. I want the tech power damage to increase the value over overload. And then at rank 6, you can either increase squad mate tech and power biotic damage or increase the recharge speed of squad mate shields by 15%. In this case, yeah, just went with that squad bonus, but either of them will work. Caden is a tank, though he will still do a pretty decent amount of damage with that assault rifle of his, but his main role really is distracting the enemy, taking a lot of damage, surviving in a way that pretty much no other squad mate can, with perhaps the exception of James, though James does have his own issues. But yeah, he's a very, very durable character that can still do a pretty decent amount of damage against enemies. Use him as a distraction while you take out enemies from a distance. And Garrus kills everything in sight. At rank 4, we have Liara. Liara is pretty squishy because she does have a low amount of HP. So she's not going to survive all that well in a lot of situations. And she can only use SMGs and pistols, further limiting her utility. Now, the idea is that it's supposed to be made up for the fact that she does have some powerful biotic abilities. Though just bear in mind that Liara is going to find it difficult to get biotic explosions going on her own. If your Shepherd is a biotic, the situation is vastly improved, though Liara's squishiness is going to bite you as well. I've used Liara a lot, story reasons really, and she dies a great deal of times on Insanity, just because she just has low survivability. Her first skill is Singularity, and it's the one you want to invest in quite a bit, especially if you're a biotic or bringing another biotic to the fight, because biotic explosion is pretty powerful. So you're looking at an ability that creates a dark sphere of energy, and it will trap enemies, as well as being able to do quite a bit of damage. If you trap them, detonate it, do a significant amount of damage. You can increase the impact radius or its whole duration. One thing I like about duration is that it can lift additional enemies before the singularity phase. So let's say you throw it in an area, an enemy walks into the area, they will get lifted in that. So I would recommend getting duration there at rank 4. Rank 5, you can either inflict some damage per second, not really a huge amount of damage, so I don't think it's worth it, or increase the recharge speed. Go with the recharge speed. And then rank 6, you can either expand the singularity field by 35% for 10 seconds, or detonate it when the field dies to inflict a pretty decent amount of damage with that. So I go with the detonation of it. Then you have Stasis. I tend to not bother with Stasis. It can be good as a disabling effect, but there are just other skills that are better to invest your points in. Warp Ammo is the jack of all trades type ammo. By rank 3, you're looking at 40% barrier damage, 20% health and armor damage, and weakening armor by 25%. Now, this would be great if not for the fact that Liara is pretty useless when it comes to her weapon damage, just because she can't use great weapon types. Even with the Citadel DLC pistol, which is very late in the game, she just is not going to do as much damage as someone with a Typhoon. Like, if she had the Typhoon, this would be amazing, but she doesn't have one. In rank 4, you either get a choice of increasing health and armor damage and barrier damage, or giving squad mates this ammo type. I'd give this to squad mates. Normally I would say not to, but Liara's weapon damage is just pretty pathetic. At rank 5, you can either increase ammo capacity or headshot damage. Given the weapons Liara is using, I'd go with armor capacity. At rank 6, you can either increase health and armor damage and barrier damage, or weaken armor targets by an additional 25%. This is where I made a mistake. I think it would have been better to increase to weaken armor targets by an additional 25% to debuff them even further. But mistakes were made. Then you have Warp, does weaken armor and does a pretty decent amount of damage. Has a pretty decent cooldown as well. At rank 4, you can either increase force, radius, and damage impact of detonations. I'd go with that, use it for detonations as opposed to just increasing the raw damage. Then you can either increase damage and duration or increase weapon damage taken by a target by 15%, increase power damage. I'd go with Expose here, and then you either get the choice between Pierce or Recharge Speed. I prefer Pierce, increase the damage to barriers and armor by 50%, and weaken armor targets by an additional 25%. So I think you're looking at a weakening of armor targets of, even though the tooltip is not saying it, of 50%. And then her Pure Biotic skill line, you're looking at 60% power recharge speed bonus and 30% health and shield bonus by rank 3. At rank 4, you can increase recharge speed or increase health and shield bonuses. Even if you increase health and shield bonuses, Liara is still going to be very squishy, and just being able to use those abilities. Like, honestly, when it comes to Liara, here's what I do. I just put her behind cover, far away from the enemies, and use her abilities to keep her alive, to try and keep her alive. And I think you benefit more from using abilities quicker than you benefit from her having 20% extra survivability. But that's just what I think on that. Then you can either increase power and force duration by 30% or increase weapon damage. Go for power and force duration. Liara won't do great weapon damage, regardless. And then squad bonus, you can either increase the recharge speed of her Singularity by 100%, but Singularity is a very fast ability regardless, so it won't really affect you that much. And I do prefer the recharge speed of all squad-made biotic powers by 10%. Liara is great with Singularity, but the problem is just getting those combos can be a bit of an issue. Even if you reduce the cooldown of Singularity to 0, even if you do manage that, you're still going to have issues. Partly because whenever Liara pokes her head out, she's likely to get shot and die. That's the problem. Like, she can get biotic detonations on her own, but you do have to cast two different abilities. Like, I guess one particular build would be to go for this, just pop a Singularity, pop a Warp right after that. That could work, but I just find her to be less effective than Javik. While Javik's abilities will do nor near as much damage as she does, although Left Grenade certainly does a great deal of damage in its own right, Javik is far more survivable, and he carries a much better weapon. That's where I stand on that, so Liara, rank 4 on this list. And number 5 is Tali Zora Vas Normandy. How should you use Tali? If you're looking at her doing a great deal of damage with her abilities, you're probably going to be disappointed. If you're looking at her doing a great deal of damage with her shotguns or pistols, you're going to be disappointed, though she can use the Citadel DLC pistol to do a decent amount of damage. Now, Tali is a character that distracts enemies, specifically with her drones, and she can have a decent amount of survivability as well because of energy drain, but it's really the distraction effect that is best used on Tali. So, energy drain steals barrier and shield power. She can restore by rank 3, 50% shields, with a recharge speed of close to 6 seconds and a decent amount of damage in a radius of 1.5 meters. At rank 4, you can either increase the damage or the impact radius. I'd probably go with the damage over here. At rank 5, you can either increase the shield restoration by 50% when draining shields, barriers, or power from synthetic enemies, or the recharge speed. The recharge speed is pretty good, so I wouldn't necessarily worry too much about that. And then you can either increase damage of the energy drain by 40% or reduce the damage taken by 40% for 10 seconds by gaining a temporary layer of armor by draining shields, barriers, or energy from synthetics. The issue is from synthetics. That's a bit of a problem there with energy drain, which, while it makes it useful against mechs, against turrets, and against Geth in general, it isn't going to be as great against Reapers, for instance. You do then have the sabotage effect, which not particularly great either. Like, Tali's great against Geth, not so much against anything else when it comes to these skills. But then you get combat drone. Combat drone, an attack drone to stun targets and draw enemy fire. Now, the drone can either have at rank 4 40% damage and shields, or it can deal damage in an AoE when it's destroyed. given the fact that it doesn't necessarily have the highest damage to begin with, or in fact its damage is pretty low and it will die very quickly, I think the explosion is probably the better choice, but you can certainly go for the other choice. You can then increase its short range attack to deal 130 points of damage across a 2.5 meter radius, and drone will stun enemies for a short duration, or increase damage in drone shields. I mean, I guess one of the choices would be shields and damage and then go into this. But I personally went with full-on damage for the drone across the board. And yeah, rank 6, you can increase it with rockets that deal 195 points of damage across a 1.5 meter radius. Not sure if these stack. Either way, the drone is a great distraction. Enemies will focus on it, meaning you have more time to do damage. And squad members that can use, another squad member that can use good weapons like Javik or Garrus especially, will get more opportunities to shoot at the enemies. Can even help keep Liara alive with the distraction there. Then you've got the defense drone. Now, the defense drone is more focused on survivability rather than pure damage. But the defense drone electrocutes enemies within its firing range. You can increase the attack range or duration. Go with attack range because it's gonna die pretty quickly. Then increase the attack rate or damage by 100% and attack range by 60%. I go with damage and attack range in this case. And then you can either damage up to 2 additional nearby targets or gain 30% chance to knock down an electrocuted enemy. Neither of these is particularly great. Then we have Quarry and Machinist. You're looking at the power recharge speed bonus of 60% and 30% health and shield bonus. Rank 4, you can increase the recharge speed or the health and shield bonuses. I prefer the recharge speed so I can use more drones in a firefight. Then you can either increase tech power damage and tech power duration by 30% or weapon damage. I chose to go weapon damage in this choice, but there's an argument to be made about tech upgrade. And then you can either give squad mates recharge speed of squad mates tech powers or increase the recharge speed of drone powers by 50%. I go with the drone recharge speed. Talon and the combat and defense drones that will serve as a great distraction, keep enemies occupied, and she does have a decent amount of survivability herself, courtesy of the effect of energy drain. She is a tank. Not necessarily the best tank, but she is a great distraction for yourself, for another squad member. She won't do a lot of damage herself, but she will keep enemy fire on those drones and on herself, allowing you and the other squad member to do the vast majority of the damage in the firefight. At number 6, we have James Vega. Probably the least favored squad member in the entire game. James does have a great deal of durability, but to be quite honest with you, I don't like using him even from a pure gameplay perspective. He does have fortification, which also gives him a damage reduction, but I'd rather focus James on his ammo type, his frag grenade, carnage, and arms master rather than fortification. He will start, I think, with a point of fortification, but I would, again, focus on other things than worry about getting the last points in there. The damage reduction is nice, but it's probably better to focus on getting James to do some decent levels of damage. Frag grenades, well, they are consumable, but they're not especially great. The thing about Javik's glyph grenades, the thing that makes them great, isn't the damage they're doing themselves, though it is a pretty decent level of damage. It's rather the fact that you can also get biotic explosions going with them. With James, you don't have that kind of benefit. You get the choice between damage or impact radius. I go with damage. Increasing grenade capacity or increasing damage to organics by 40% over 10 seconds. In this case, grenade capacity is just better, just being able to get those. Though, against certain boss type enemies, of course, bleed damage would be pretty useful. And then you can either get armor piercing or shield overload. I'd go with armor piercing. Armor is more difficult to deal with in most cases. Then you have incendiary ammo, which increases by rank 3. You're looking at almost 17% health and armor damage bonus, though it's not armor piercing, which also reduces the effectiveness of that armor. Then you can increase. Then you can either give squad mates this effect, or increase the health and armor damage bonus by 6%. Go with that. Increase ammo capacity or headshot damage. Obviously, our ammo capacity, especially when we're thinking about the fact that he can still use the Typhoon. And then health and armor damage bonus by 10% more. James is decent. He's just not Garrus, plain and simple. Then he gets Carnage, which can be effective against armor and does a good amount of AoE damage. But the problem is that it's not in a big radius. But you're looking at a decent amount of damage over there. You can increase the impact radius or increase the damage by 30%. I chose to go with the damage. Increase recharge speed or incapacitate enemies. Went with recharge speed. Like, you're looking at knocking enemies back anyway, which obviously is going to be useful. So just just knocking them down versus 35% recharge speed, pretty useful to have the recharge speed there. And in rank 6, you can either increase the damage armor units or increase damage by 50%. Went with the 50% damage here, though probably would have been better in some ways to go with the armor damage, because it's really mainly used to be used against armor targets. And then finally we have Arms Master. You can get 20% health and shield bonuses, and by rank 3 you're looking at 30% weapon damage. Then you can increase that weapon damage to 50% or increase health and shield bonuses by 40%, make them more durable if you so desire. You can increase shield recharge delay or increase power damage. Power damage, of course, is going to count for the frag grenade, for Carnage. So I chose that, though there's some argument for shield recharge, just like there is an argument for increasing his HP and shield bonuses by 40%. And then you can either get 100% melee damage and health and shield bonuses, or increase squad mate health and shields by 20%. But here's the thing. James is decent. That's the thing about him. But he doesn't offer the biotic potential of Liara, the drone distraction potential of Tali, and he's only really getting a 50% weapon damage increase. He is durable. Yes, he is durable. But he's just kind of average in a lot of ways. He's got nothing special except those frag grenades, and those frag grenades don't hold a candle compared to the lift grenades that Java can use. So I'm just not really impressed with the kit that James has. Though he is decent, he's just not special in any way, shape, or form. He will get the job done, absolutely. Like, he's an all-rounder, combat-focused character that has a decent amount of survivability, though, again, that won't hold a candle to, say, someone like Caden, who has significantly more damage reduction for his own abilities, nor does he hold a candle to the sheer weapon damage that Garrus has, nor does he have the ability damage of someone like Liara or Javik, or the distract potential of Tali. But he's still pretty decent to use in a firefight. That's how I'd view James. Just all-rounder, jack of all trades in some ways, jack of all trades between survivability and weapon damage, but the master of nothing, really. Finally, at number 7, it is, of course, Jacob. No, not really. It's Edie. Though Jacob is actually pretty decent when you look at his kill line, but not going to talk about that. Anyway, Edie is the worst squad member that you can use throughout the main game of Mass Effect 3. She does have some decent abilities, a decent amount of survivability, but she won't hold a candle to the power, the weapon damage that, say, someone like Hayden, who has an incredible amount of survivability, and can use the Typhoon. Or even James. Yes, James is better than Edie, because he can use the Typhoon, he can use better weapon types. Edie can't use good weapon types. It's all about the powers with her. And unfortunately, those powers are nowhere near as good as what Liara can do when it comes down to it. She does have Incinerate, Overload, Defense Matrix, Decoy, and Unshackled AI. Let's go over these in one at a time. So Incinerate can do a decent amount of damage and can make an enemy panic, stopping health regeneration. But health is not really important when we're talking about Mass Effect 3. It's far more important to worry about damage to armor or shields. And Incinerate is just not going to necessarily be that great, though it can do a decent amount of damage. And 885 damage with an increase of damage by an additional 40% over 8 seconds, so a dot when you use it. And then you can increase the damage to either frozen chill targets, or you can increase the damage to armor targets by 50%. I prefer the damage to armor targets over there. Then you've got Overload, pretty decent skill, can do a lot of damage to shields and barriers, and really weaken them. Then there's Defense Matrix, her survival skill. Reinforce armor with protective currents, and then purge the currents to restore shields. It does slow down power usage by 60%, but it does give her, by rank 3, we're looking at recharge speed of 16%, shield restore 70%, and damage reduction of 15%. Pretty decent. And then at rank 4, you can increase that damage protection by additional 5%, or increase her shield restoration by 30%. I prefer the flat damage reduction when it comes to it. Then you can increase shield recharge delay by 15%, or increase tech power damage by 25% while defense matrix is active. So Overload and Incinerate are going to do more damage. And given the fact that Edie's damage is pretty weak, increasing her power damage by 25% is probably worth it. And then you can either increase the damage prediction by 10%, though you're always going to have that 20% or 15%, depending on what you chose earlier, or you can reduce the power speed penalty by 30%. I prefer going with this, so reducing it in half, so she can use more Incinerates and Overloads. Decoy, not particularly great, but can be a decent distraction. Can be a pretty decent distraction. Like, this is the thing about Edie. She's good in staying alive and keeping you alive with some of these abilities, absolutely. Though I would not spend too many points in Decoy, because I would rather Edie do more damage with Incinerate and Overload. Tali is better in terms of pure distraction, because even if you spend everything in Decoy, it's not gonna be as great necessarily as the two drones that Tali can use. And then you have Unshackled AI, which increases her health and shield bonuses and power damage bonus. So Edie's all about some distraction, some survivability, and potentially a good amount of tech power damage. Though she can't really synergize with a lot of other people when it comes to that. So if your Shepherd is not someone who can use tech power damage, then you're going to have some issues because of that. I guess Caden, to an extent, sure. Caden, Garrus maybe with Overload that he does have, but you would need some other skills to really make those tech combos work. Then you can increase power damage by an additional 20%, so she's doing 80% extra power damage. At rank 5, you can either increase weapon damage or tech power damage. Since the weapon choices she has are pretty weak, I prefer to go with tech power damage. So she's going to be doing 110% tech power damage, more than double the damage with her abilities. And then you can either increase her shield recharge delay or increase squad mate tech power damage and duration by 10%. She's useful as the distraction. She's useful in terms of doing a pretty decent amount of damage with her abilities, but she doesn't hold a candle to anyone else. Like, other squad members are better because they have abilities that just work better, like Tali with her multiple drones and the distractions they provide, as well as the major damage reduction that she can get from energy drain, or Liara, who can do a great deal of crowd control with her singularities and then do a good amount of damage with warp combined with it. Edie just won't have that pure damage potential, and even her survivability's potential or distraction potential is just weaker than other squad members. She just has the worst weapon choices, and her skills don't work exceptionally well within the context of the Mass Effect 3 meta. So yeah, she is the worst squad member in the game.